Me in studio to share their reporting and their insights. CNN's Abby Phillip, Paul Kane with the Washington Post, former federal prosecutor Shan Wu, and CNN's Sarah Murray. I should note, you just saw the president of Brazil arriving at the White House being greeted by President Trump. We could hear from the president and the Brazilian leader in the hour. We'll bring you that if it happens and when it happens. So let's pick up a place where Kara left off. Talks about the campaign finance investigation. And it's really revealing, page after page after page. Obviously, that means there are still sensitive investigative details that the court is not willing to release right now. Let me start with the attorney at the table. We get new information, and then we always get new questions when this happens. What's most significant to you?
Most significant to me, I think, is the timeline here. When we see how long ago they began this, and they were looking for his emails all the way back to 2015. So I think the breadth tells us a lot. Obviously rebuts the president's usual point that this is a recent fabricated witch hunt. The other thing that struck me was there's a lot of emphasis in here about the inflating and deflating of financial statements and assets, and that really very much mirrors the same allegations about what the president's doing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I also think you were holding up all of these redacted pages. You know, that's the meat of what we would love to know investigators are still looking into. And, you know, I think we've talked a lot about how the special counsel seems to be nearing the end of his investigation, although we don't know when that will be happening. But it's clear the Southern District of New York has this ongoing investigation into campaign finance violations. That's why, as Kara pointed out, so much of this is still redacted. And we know in New York they're looking into a number of other Trump entities. And I don't think that we can rule out the fact that, you know, when President Trump is no longer president, he may face legal troubles whenever that is. I think what we're looking at in the Southern District of New York is probably going to be a long-running investigation that looks into not only Donald Trump's involvement in these campaign finance violations, but, you know, his involvement in the Trump Organization, what's been going on with his charity, and all of these other various probes that we know are ongoing. And
it also reminds you that we're just looking in the case of Michael Cohen here, and everybody involved, anybody who's been part of the investigation, whether just to cooperate or whether somehow to be a witness where they have serious questions about you, they already know this, but now we have a better understanding of the depth and the extent to which Mueller's team, and then whatever he's handed off to other prosecutors, are going back your email, your phone records. Where are you? Getting actual live warrants where they can track you as you move around.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the talking points that we've heard from the White House about Michael Cohen is that this has nothing to do with the president, that it's all related to his own personal financial issues related to taxi cab medallions and other things like that. But what these documents seem to reveal is that this all actually started with Mueller, and that is actually, in fact, related to the president, because that's the crux of the Mueller investigation is the 2016, you know, election interference investigation. So I think the White House is trying to spin this as well as they can, but there's a lot, that we don't know, and a lot that it seems that they don't know about, you know, what all is in these documents that could really have to do with the president, not just during the campaign and as president, but going back years when we're talking about the inflating of financial records. I mean, these are things that continue to be bubbling under the surface that all of these other investigatory bodies might be looking into. And yeah, once President Trump is not the president anymore, we don't know where this is all going to go, and how much of this could come back and become a real problem for him.
And how much of this might be in a Mueller report that we expect him winding down. We don't know if that's days, we don't know if that's weeks, and then we don't know how much of that will be made public and when we will see it. But if you look at some of this, Mueller started the Cohen investigation. Exhibit A, the first Cohen Gmail warrant, talks about Foreign Agent Registration Act. Was Michael Cohen trying to sell influence, sell access to the Trump administration? Then you see the iCloud records, as Gmail records, other warrants. So this is a meticulous thing that reminds us that as we're waiting for the Mueller report, there's so much we don't know about the scope. We know the things that have ended up in court with Paul Manafort or Rick Gates or Roger Stone or Michael Cohen, but there's a lot we don't know.
There's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot that Congress is going to want to get at, and what are they going to receive? If the Mueller report is coming out relatively soonish, you know, what is Congress going to be able to see? Are they going to be allowed to get some of those redacted documents? Are they going to be able to see that, or are they going to be cloistered just to those who have the highest level of clearance, like Adam Schiff and the Intel Committee? There's too many questions left to be answered here.
And
a lot of questions. Good.
One of the things, you know, you're talking about the volume of the data. You hear from witnesses over and over again when they go in for their interview, for their meeting with Mueller's team. They are stunned by the amount of information this team already has. And this is our first real window into the volume of that information. You know, we're talking about basically all of Michael Cohen's internet presence, all of his data, all of the phone calls he was making, not listening to the phone calls, but who he was calling, when he was calling those people, who was calling him. That is all stuff they knew before they ever had to have a conversation with him. It tells you why they are so good at pinpointing people who go in for lying to them, because they already know so much. And this is our first real sense of exactly how much they have.
And we will hear which hunt or which hoax, depending on which version the president wants to use on this given day. Take us through how hard it is to do this. You can't walk into court and say you want a warrant for somebody's email and their digital files and to track their cell phone and to watch who's calling them back and forth. You can't do that. It's hard to do that for anybody. It's harder to do that, is it not, for an attorney because of privilege issues, and an attorney whose client includes the President of the United States. You got a pretty high bar to cross with the judge, don't you?
Absolutely. For any search in an attorney's office, it's going to have to be approved at a very high level at the Justice Department. And you'll see a little bit of how much background information the special agent who was putting together the affidavit supporting this already had about what their suspicions were. So even though we're only seeing the warrant requests, you can also see just how suspicious they were of the many different threads going on. You know, one thing about those cell phone records that I keep coming back to is I think that's a great concern for the president's legal team, because Cohen no longer has a privilege, but if there's lots and lots of calls going back and forth between him and those lawyers, I continue to think they may be converted into fact witnesses.
Oh, we'll watch that as it play out. You mentioned the high bar, and someone high at the Justice Department would have to approve going to the judge. Then the judge has to approve it. So you got two high bars. That person was, for the longest time, Rod Rosenstein, who we learned today is staying on a bit longer than anticipated. We thought Rod Rosenstein would be packed up and gone now with the new Attorney General in place. I think I'm just counting the seconds until we get the deep state, the Trump allies out there. We'll see if the president himself gets involved in this, that somehow Rod Rosenstein, who they view as Exhibit A of part of this deep state in the Justice Department, now co-opting the new Attorney General. Why is he staying a little bit longer? Just to help with the Mueller report? Do we know?
I would love to know why Rod Rosenstein.
That was the chuckle of someone who has spent months working this.
Yeah,
story.
you know, I would really love to know why he's decided to stay a little bit longer. It's certainly not lost on us that, you know, he did want to stay until he felt like the Mueller report was essentially done or in very good hands. Obviously, the Mueller report, as far as we know, as of this morning, has not been handed over to the Justice Department more broadly, to Bill Barr. And so that may be at play here. You know, we reported a couple weeks back that the Mueller report essentially was done and could be, you know, handed over to Bill Barr that week. It didn't happen. That's not because that reporting was wrong at the time. It's because there's something that is now sort of delaying this. And so our question is there more going on with the Mueller investigation now? Is this simply, you know, them trying to get their ducks in a row and figure out how they want to move this over to Bill Barr and then what they want to make public? Because it's pretty clear Congress wants to see a lot of it. Yeah. We don't know the answers to those questions. We wish we did. If you're Bill Barr, it makes perfect sense. If you trust Rod Rosenstein, and we know he does, keep the guy who was there at the beginning through the end if you can. If you're on the president's side of this equation, or even the people who take it farther than the president, you're a little suspicious today. We'll keep eye on that one up.